Don Pablo Escobar.
He was the king of cocaine, flooding America with tons of the white powder and making himself a billionaire many times over. His staggering wealth, amassed through the suffering of millions, allowed him to wield immense power and influence. He tried to make people think he was the image of a Robin Hood-like generous outlaw who helped the poor, but in reality, he was a cruel criminal who hurt many people, ruined countless lives through drug addiction, and only cared about himself and his power. Escobar's rise to power was meteoric. He carved a ruthless path through the Colombian underworld, establishing the Medellin cartel and amassing a fortune estimated at $30 billion. His extravagance was legendary. He owned private islands, a fleet of airplanes, and even a personal zoo complete with hippos and giraffes. He was also known for his brutal tactics, such as assassinating judges, politicians, journalists, and police officers, as well as bombing civilian targets and kidnapping prominent figures. He waged a war against the Colombian government and the United States, who tried to extradite him to face justice. His empire was built on the back of the cocaine trade, and at the height of his power, he was responsible for 80% of the cocaine smuggled into the United States. His wealth was legendary, and so were his methods of dealing with cash surplus. It is said that he spent $2,500 a month just on rubber bands to keep his stacks of cash bundled together. Pablo Escobar, born in 1949 to a peasant family in the poor Colombian town of Rio Negro, the precocious young Pablo grew up admiring the wealthy drug lords and vowing to become richer than them all. Through a mix of determination, criminal savvy, and sheer brutality, he would make good on that promise, becoming one of the wealthiest drug lords in history and the 7th richest man in the world at his peak. Once Escobar offered to pay off Colombia's national debt in exchange for immunity. In the late 1980s, Escobar was facing the threat of extradition to the United States, where he would face trial and possible execution. He tried to negotiate with the Colombian government and proposed to pay $10 billion, which was about the same amount as the country's debt at the time, if they would grant him amnesty and let him stay in Colombia. No, the government did not agree with this proposal, as it would essentially pardon one of the world's most notorious drug lords and criminals. But with great power comes great enemies, and Escobar had plenty. The Colombian government, under pressure to capture him, found itself in a stalemate against a man who was both feared and loved by the public. In a move that shocked the world, Escobar negotiated his surrender on his own terms. He agreed to cease his criminal activities in exchange for a reduced jail sentence and the right to build his own prison, La Catedral. This deal also included a clause that prevented his extradition to the United States, where he faced severe charges. Instead of a normal prison, La Catedral was like a fancy resort. It had a football field, jacuzzi, bar, and even a waterfall. These luxurious amenities were very uncommon for a prison. At La Catedral, Escobar was able to continue running his criminal operations without worrying about the law. He enjoyed luxuries that most regular law-abiding citizens could only dream about. The Colombian government's agreement to allow Escobar to build his own prison demonstrated the extent of his power and influence, even in the face of legal consequences. Among the various eccentricities, Escobar's private zoo at his Hacienda Nápoles estate stands out. He imported exotic animals including giraffes, elephants, and hippos as symbols of his wealth and power. The zoo was open to the public, and it became a peculiar attraction, showcasing not just the animals but the sheer audacity of Escobar's character. When Pablo Escobar's ranch was taken away, most of the animals were sent to safe new homes. However, the hippos that were brought to the ranch continued to thrive and reproduce rapidly. As a result, large groups of wild hippos still roam the Colombian countryside today. Escobar's wealth bought him influence and immunity, but it also brought terror to Colombia. His cartel was responsible for countless murders, including the bombing of Avianca Flight 203 and the assassination of presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galán. The Colombian government, under immense pressure, waged a war against Escobar, leading to a siege that would change the nation forever. One of the most surprising stories about Escobar's lavish lifestyle is when he reportedly burned $2 million in cash just to keep his daughter warm. Escobar and his family were hiding from the authorities in a hideout in the mountains. His daughter was suffering from hypothermia. life-threateningly low body temperature. To keep her warm, Escobar burned a large stack of cash as firewood. Escobar died on his birthday after a rooftop shootout with the police. On December 2nd, 1993, Escobar turned 44 years old. The next day, he was tracked down by a special unit of the Colombian police, with the help of the US DEA and CIA. He tried to escape through the roof of his hideout, but was shot multiple times by the police. His death was as dramatic as his life, ending a chapter of Colombian history that many hoped would bring peace to a nation long tormented by his activities.